I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the left and the right and how much it has changed. I guess really focusing on the right. There was an interesting segment on Bill Maher with this woman. She said she was a leftist, a MAGA leftist, and Bill Maher was like, "What is that?" And so she went on to explain. And a lot of things that she said did make sense, and you can see why Trump was able to get so much crossover and why there were people like in 2016 who, were like Bernie people who flipped over and voted for Trump. And yesterday, we watched a clip of Don Lemon saying that people could vote for AOC and Trump like on the same ticket. And Bill Maher thought that was crazy. And he said it was because they're both so authentic. And I don't really think that's the reason. I think there's like populist sort of reasons why people might like them both, actually. So I want to analyze that. I want to also go back in time to something Bill Kristol said, because it's amazing how much people who were never Trumpers have decided to just shift their ideals and their policies to attack Trump. And I've talked about that before, but it just really is remarkable. And of course, the media continues to just take the dumbest positions on, deporting these gangs, these criminal gangs from Venezuela. I don't get it. I especially don't get the media deciding to double down on all this. Do they want to lose all their money, all the people who's watching, all their credibility? So they're just nuts, man. They're just nuts. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost a stream, run my website, all that good stuff you guys can't support. I do appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the website as well. You guys can also check out my different books that I've written, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. And you guys can also check out some of my fiction books that I've written. I have 18 books altogether. Most of them are fiction. And I have like children's chapter books to like new adult stuff. So I encourage you guys to check it out. And I'll have some new stuff out. Well, I'll let you know. We're always working on stuff. So in May, I forget the date, but Motor City Comic Con, I will be at Motor City Comic Con. I don't have my booth number yet. I will let you guys know when I know that spot, and hopefully I'll have some cool stuff to show that's going to be new there, but we will see. But I will certainly let you folks know. Thank you to those of you watching live, to those of you who are on Facebook, and those of you on YouTube. I know you guys can't see each other, but I see you all. Thank you to those who chat, and to those of you who watch back later. See April in the chat. And I know maybe some of you might be coming from my sister's live, my artist who's working on my children's book and who did the artwork for, of course, God is blatantly against abortion, the cover art. So thank you to those of you who have followed her off of my recommendation. She's doing a lot of like character art with like the actors, like doing like, she did like Blade, I think, like last week. And I'm like, geez, that's a lot of time. A lot of detail on a little teeny tiny canvas. She paints a ton of tiny little canvases. Something interesting that I just saw, by the way, Jeremy Boring, the CEO of Daily Wire, is stepping down. So this is a very short article from Axios. I'm going to go ahead and read through it. I thought this was interesting. Um, Boring. Let me up it a bit so I can read it and not have to squint so bad. Jeremy Boring, co-founder of Daily Wire, stepping down from his role as co-CEO to focus on creative projects for the company. He told staff in a memo obtained by Axios on Tuesday. Why it matters. Boring has been with the Daily Wire since its inception in 2015. He helped grow the outlet from a tiny news startup with 4.7 million in seed funding to a media giant valued north of 1 billion last year. Caleb Robinson, the company's founding CEO, will become the company's full-time CEO effective immediately. Robinson and Boring have been co-CEOs since 2019. Robinson co-founded the company alongside Boring and the outlet's editor, Ben Shapiro. In a note to staff, Boring said that he will remain with the company in an advisory role. He will continue to host Daily Wire Backstage, the company's monthly show featuring Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, and Andrew Clavin. He'll focus full-time on creative projects, including the completion of the Daily Wire's TV series, The Pendragon Cycle, in which he serves as director and executive producer. Boring has led the Daily Wire's commercial expansion over the past decade, growing the outlet from social media publishing brand to a streamer and e-commerce giant. Most notably, he has overseen the creation of Daily Wire Plus subscription streaming service and BentKey, the subscription streamer for kids. He also helped build the company's e-commerce business into a multi-million-dollar revenue line. And Robinson and Shapiro plan to continue pursuing a growth investment in 2025. So, what do you guys think about that? I do not have any inside tea. I do not. There's some people saying stuff behind the scenes. But one person who's like, this is the real story is a complete conspiracy theory wacko. So I just be careful who I put stock in. Some people are like, he dropped the ball on Brett Cooper. I don't know why he's stepping down other than what the article says. And they do have a lot of projects. A lot of like money from my understanding of Daily Wire that they're accumulating is like from commercial stuff that they're doing. I guess with their ads and their revenue stuff they generate that way, but I don't know how successful the chocolates are, but like Jeremy's razors and things like that. So and now they got into like they're selling candles now. And so I think they might try to rev up that sort of revenue in the business. And they've been working on this Pendragon cycle thing for a minute now. And I hope that's good because they're investing a lot of time and money into it. And I have liked things that are on Daily Wire Plus. But I don't know, a lot of it, I think they're the best stuff that they have is stuff that they buy and that they put on their app. I mean, I think their series that they do themselves are really good. Like they're in their movies, like Am I Racist was great. What is a Woman was really great. I thought Michael Knowles, his project on Anthony Fauci was really good. But I wanted to really like the Gina Carano movie. It just wasn't my thing. You know, I'm not like I love Western stuff anyway, but there's some Westerns like and enjoy. Maybe I need to watch more of the genre. I guess I haven't seen a ton actually, but it I hope it does well because they I mean acquired the rights to it. I don't know anything about the source material. They all, I mean, Boring and Knowles and Shapiro, they're out of like Hollywood and had dreams going in that route in the creative entertainment space. So I appreciate what they're doing with as far as making content and making alternatives. And I wish him well in that role. That doesn't mean he's going anywhere. He's still doing the backstage stuff. and commentating, and Ben Shapiro had stepped down from like the CEO portion, but is still obviously the face and very active. And I wonder if they'll be bringing anyone else on to join them in a, they don't have any ladies. I don't know what the whole story is behind Brett, but Gandis, I think, obviously needed to go. So I don't wish him well. Could be just family stuff, or just really wanting to. I mean, it really could just be really wanting to focus on the creative stuff and not managing people. It really could be that, or just fitting himself and other people feeling that he fits better into that role as what he's passionate about, it driving the commercial stuff and the creative stuff versus overseeing the paychecks and all that stuff. So April said, "Don't care, I'm over it." Or maybe that's something else. You guys are like having conversations with each other. I don't always know if you're talking about boring or whatever, but we'll see. I do still like stuff on Daily Wire, so I'm sure he's not going anywhere. But if there's any interesting tea, I guess I'll let you know. I don't have any inside scoop. It just dropped. I guess it didn't just drop. I just saw it. The article's about 4 hours ago. They posted it. Anyway, I want to talk about this clip from Bill Maher. And I suppose it was this past weekend. And there was a woman on the show. I think her name is Batya Ungar-Sargon. And she explained to Bill Maher how she was a leftist but MAGA, and he thought that was just kind of inconceivable. And she went on to explain, and it made sense. So we're gonna go ahead and watch this and have a conversation about how things have changed on the right and how much it should change.
I mean, I was never a Republican or a conservative. I was a leftist, and I'm still a leftist. I'm just a MAGA leftist now because
that makes no sense.
Well, would you like me to explain it?
Please do. Yes, please.
When I look at what President Trump ran on and the agenda that he's enacting right now, he took a Republican Party that was built on social conservatism, foreign interventions and wars, and free trade and free markets. And he basically took an axe to all of those. During the campaign, he said, look, I mean, he's pretty pro-gay. That's pretty obvious. He appointed the highest ranking out gay person, Scott Bessent, our Secretary of Treasury, which is incredible. And he sidelined the pro-life wing of his party.
He has changed the party for sure.
Okay, so he believes abortion should be legal for 12 weeks.
But free trade,
on foreign intervention, he's anti-war. He's trying to bring it to an end to all of these wars, okay?
By surrendering, but yes.
Okay.
I mean, that is one way to end the war.
Well, you know, he's on the other side of another party that is quite pro-war and wants to keep the war going, right?
But
so let's just get to the third point. And the third point is, and he's not free trade, he does not believe in free trade. He looked at our destroyed manufacturing base. He looked at the downwardly mobile working class. He looked at the fact that working class Americans can no longer afford the American dream. And he looked at why that was, which was there was a handshake agreement between both parties that we should somehow have free trade, which resulted in shipping 5 million good manufacturing jobs overseas to build up China and Mexico.
And some came here.
No, what they did was they brought in millions and millions of illegal migrants to compete with the jobs that remained here. And what Donald Trump said was, we have to stop selling out the working class. That agenda that he laid out, socially moderate, anti-war, and anti-free trade protectionist, that is a leftist agenda.
Sam, I will bring you in, I swear to God.
So the anti-free markets, anti-war, and a moderate, even maybe left social kind of bent. Now, as far as the economics, there's obviously some differences uh between, I think, him and folks on the left. Like Kamala Harris, some of the things she was pitching for um taxing on unrealized like gains, that was crazy. And people say, "Oh, why are you simping for millionaires? You don't have all that money." It's like, okay, but you're still gonna like crash the stock market and just ruin the economy anyway. And it's just unethical. I think it's just unethical. So she was pitching some pretty crazy things, and she was pitching like price controls and stuff, and like right out the gate. And folks are like, price controls don't work. Even the journalists who wanted her to win or beat Trump and not don't like Trump are like, this is not responsible. Um, but as far as the focus on the worker, the focus on the we have to we've sold them out, and there's a lot of their jobs are gone. We need to bring their jobs back. And then there's all these people who are here. Um, I don't know how much Bernie talked about like the competing sending people, because they're all the Democrats nowadays are like pretty much open borders. But Trump was very much like, hey, let's close down these borders and not have, be flooding in. And let's renegotiate some of this trade stuff. Let's do the tariffs. Maybe they'll hurt us up front, but we're going to incentivize people to come here and do business and all kinds of different stuff. You can see, or if you just recall, in 2016, there were Bernie supporters who went ahead and voted for Trump. And people are like, oh, everybody voted for Trump was racist. Everybody, blah, blah, blah. Oh. I know people who voted for Trump who were very left, like socialist people. Maybe not even social, like maybe straight up communists. But they still voted for Trump because they wanted something different. They didn't want an establishment kind of person. Someone else I know voted straight party Republican, and they're not Republican, but they were so mad about how Bernie Sanders was treated in 2016. I don't know how much you guys remembered or paid attention back then, but once like Hillary Clinton became the nominee on Twitter, and it was still Twitter at the time, it was trending Dem exit, and all these people were very upset. I don't know how much of that is real voters not really showing up, but she, obviously lost by very slim margins in a handful of states. But I do know people who were disgruntled in real life and would have voted for Bernie and couldn't vote for Bernie and ended up voting for Trump. So I think it is very possible, what Don Lemon said the other day, to have someone who votes for AOC and Trump on the same ticket. And actually, he said it was because of authenticity. I don't really think his reasoning was great, but there are some different like policy reasons actually why people might do both. Maybe all their conclusions aren't together, but some of their thinking or aligns. Like, hey, I think they care about the worker. Now she did some really messed up stuff, like she scared a bunch of jobs out of New York for one, and she still got her job. She still got her job. But they feel that she speaks to them and she cares about them, and Trump speaks to the people, and the people feels that he cares about them and their jobs and wants to make sure that that they have help when they need it. So yeah, people could totally vote for them on the same ticket, and people who were going to vote for Bernie could go ahead and vote for Trump as opposed to voting for somebody else. So economically, I can see that. I mentioned how when I went to the African American the Black History event in the White House the night before I went to a party, and I was talking among other Black Republicans, and we're on the same page, like being Black Republicans, but we all had different opinions on like economics and Doge, like if they should send those checks or not, and who was a real fiscal conservative, and how much welfare should we give here or there, and somebody was like very populist. Then like what's justified war, who do you support, this person or that person who has a lot of kind of pro-war rhetoric, and should we bomb this place, or I know we weren't talking about bombing, but just what's the how much funding should we continue to give to Ukraine, and what should be negotiated, and how is the war going to end? Like, we were all debating all kinds of different topics, and we're all on the same side, but things are, some of us were more fiscally conservative and others were not. Some were more populist. I was the most I would say socially conservative person in the room, and there were other social conservatives in the room, but I would say I was the most socially conservative person. So there's definitely a range, and there's a big tent. But Trump, his economic policies are different. People for years have been wanting stuff done about the border and illegal immigration. And if you recall, like days of McCain and the primary running up to like 2016, there were people very squishy on that issue because she talks about people making deals, like Republicans and Democrats. Will talk tough on the border, but then they also, on amnesty, which encourages bad behavior, and all kinds of different stuff. And Trump was just like, nope, build a wall, close the border, we're sending people back. And his rhetoric when he ran this past election was stronger, saying things like, we're going to have the greatest mass deportation anyone's ever seen, and he had the leeway to do this because people saw what not enforcing the law does. And you get Lake and Riley's and other, situations like that. So Joe Biden's, open border policies failed. Borders are Kamala Harris failed. So Donald Trump got to come in and be very, very tough on the border. So she says she's a leftist, but MAGA. I think the position of the leftist is really open borders. So I would say she doesn't really align there that much, but he is very the tariffs is not very free market. So I'll give her that. The thing that he's the most left wing on is the social stuff. So she brought up Besant, who is a Treasury Secretary who is married to a man. So he's the highest ranking gay official. And they didn't do a whole thing like they would if he was in the Biden administration, because they were just like, rainbows everywhere. This is my rainbow person. This is my rainbow person. This is my, they just made a big deal all the time. And he's just like, yeah, I'm married to a guy. These are my kids. I got good kids, and that's my life. I'm here because of my skills. Then there's also Rick Grinnell, who was in his former administration or appointed temporarily for his position that he had. So he came into office. He was the first president to come into office being pro gay marriage. The big thing is the abortion issue. And she mentioned that he was just for it, like up to 12 weeks. That's what we assume. In the past, he said things that were kind of like, I think, near viability. I think somewhere actually between maybe 15, 20 weeks is probably his convictions about it. I don't know. But the idea that you can just send it back to the states, I mean, that's the narrative, and he's pushing it. And there's a lot of Republicans who have been echoing that, like, oh, it needs to be a states issue, states' rights issue, etc. The Republican position for a very long time, including while he was president before, was that we want the 14th Amendment to recognize the preborn, and that would ultimately get rid of abortion. Like, so abolishment was the goal. It was not, hey, kick it back to the states. Because if you do kick it back to the states and you say you support what the states decide on that, okay, you can say one state, you can totally ban it, but that those people can always leave and go somewhere else and, I don't know, have an abortion in the 8th month. And Trump supports the state's right to be able to abort in the 8th month. So I don't like it. There are in name differences, you could say, from him and like other Democrats, but in practicality, it's kind of the same as a lot of mainstream Democrat positions on it. So I think Trump's though he did have mailers sent to my house that said, common sense abortion policies, I think his positions are actually extreme, especially because when a state, I guess particularly during the election time, had things that were closer to 6 weeks or of outright ban, he was vocal about disagreeing with those things instead of being silent and just trying to stay out of stuff. So, and I don't know what his moral convictions are, his real moral convictions are about it versus what he thought was good at the time politically. But I know a lot of people stick up before him politically for what he wants to do, but at the end of the day, you could say he did what he needed to do. But this man fights for what he wants to do. What he wants, he will fight for. If he wants to fight for tariffs, he will push tariffs. If he wants everyone to say that he won the 2020 election and everyone else is like, nope, that's not true, and it's going to be a thing and we're going to argue about it for the next decade or whatever, he's going to keep saying that. He's going to find people who will say what he says about it. He will help prop them up to win elections, and they will keep on that narrative. And if you get through your primary and then you lose the election, but you didn't stomp hard enough or the election was stolen, I'm going to go on social media and be glad that you lost. And those are sorts of things that he did during the midterm. So people fight for what they want to fight for. People fight for what they want to fight for. So I think as far as his anti-war position, I think that's the position that the country was ready to move in. And I saw a Charlie Kirk video today. Someone had asked, they had said something like, I don't see how Christians could vote for Trump. And Charlie Kirk said, well, you've never heard people say that about George W. Bush. And I don't know if that's the case, but I was not quite old enough to vote during that time, but I'm sure people probably say crazy stuff like that too. But they always they hated him. They always hate the Republican that's there at the time, and they hype it up to a higher degree. So it's higher now in the hatred against Trump than it was during Bush. But man, people hated Bush back in the day. They hated Bush back in the day. Now he's a sweet old man who takes candy from Michelle Obama, and they're all buddies and BFFs. But people hated his guts back in the day. As far as he's like, George W. Bush led all these people to war off this lie and other stuff like that, and he got all these people killed. But people say he's a Christian, and I'm like, I didn't think Charlie's video was very fair to George W. I mean, as far as like seeking weapons of mass destruction, they were going off of intel that was given, and the war in Afghanistan and other places didn't last long. It was the aftermath. And I told you guys that my eldest sister was reading Condoleezza's book, and they really did believe in their mission going in. But the issue is that they achieved their objective, and then they came up with a new objective, you know? And the new objective took a very long time, obviously. Took a very long time. So I I didn't think how Charlie said that was quite fair. Like I think the how you would answer that is to not throw George W. Bush under the bus and just kind of belittle reasons why Christians might feel uncomfortable voting for Trump. He should have just said there are like policy reasons why a Christian might want to vote either way, like for a Republican or Democrat. But as far as what you feel is going to be a more sort of whichever agenda is going to lead to more human, I don't know, flourishing that's aligns more with the will of God or the prosperity of America and all that like that's why you would vote that particular way. And he did mention that in the Bible there's a bunch of imperfect people who are leaders who do things, and God still can use people to bring about, you know, righteousness or judgment, whatever. God will use whoever he will use. But he did say that, but I didn't think I didn't love his answer. RC said they hate Trump more than they hate Bush. It always like I think it always goes up. Someone once said, someone who used to be in our church said that they thought that they hated people hated Reagan more than they hated Bush. I can't attest to that because I wouldn't know about the Reagan stuff, like being like in that time, being able to really speak on that. But they really hated Bush's guts, man. Folks hated. I mean, I still remember Kanye. They were doing the Katrina thing, the hurricane stuff, and he's like, Bush don't care about black people, and Mike Myers looking like, did you just say that? And people were like, no, Kanye's right. What he said was true. He don't care about black people. And they really blamed that man for a hurricane. He was telling people to get out, and they still blamed it on him. And I had one teacher that had a counter that in the classroom of every death in during the war. Every death, every day he put that on the board. Like he hated George W. And a lot of people did. So I remember one commercial during the Obama McCain cycle. There was somebody driving and they just kept looking in the rear view mirror, and it was like George W. Bush, and like, don't go back, voting for McCain is going back. So when it came time to vote for McCain or vote for Obama, people wanted something different, and Obama was acting like there was going to be no war. Of course, he did war. He did war not well, but he did it a lot. I think he expanded it. We were like in 5 wars and stuff, you know. So people were sold something else, and they were ready to move on. They were tired of the fighting. They were tired, and people talked about it all the day. Like I mentioned my teacher, it was on the news all the time, you know. People had just had enough, and then Obama revved it up. You had Benghazi and all kinds of stuff. So when Trump came along and he had been trashing, you know, Bush and his plans and the war and all that stuff for years, and then he dared to like talk about Jeb to his face and all these folks. He was saying we're gonna have peace. It was refreshing to a lot of folks. It was very refreshing to a lot of folks. People don't have that, you know, mentality like they did back then. I think you got to be willing to go in and blow stuff up if you need to and get out. There are some Trump people though who were upset about Trump going after the Houthis, and they're like, why are we doing that? Is just, and they're saying stuff like, oh, it's because Israel wants us to, and we're the lapdogs of Israel. Guys, Houthis have been attacking ships and our shipping lanes, and it has been causing us to have to reroute, and it has upped the price of products because it has increased shipping time. So that is part of inflation. So we blow up pirates, guys. Look at the Barbie Wars. We blow up pirates. They can't be messing with our stuff. Sorry. So yes, it wasn't even just MAGA people who were upset about it, of course, but there were lefties over the weekend upset about the Houthis. I'm like, Biden shouldn't have just let them roam free doing whatever. He shouldn't have ignored them and made them such a problem. So anyway, but where's the Republican Party going? Is it going to remain in this sort of populist view, anti-war kind of view? You know, I think as long as the Middle East or the world wants to be peaceful, you can allow it to be peaceful. Unfortunately, you're always going to have bad actors. That's why the United States always needs to be strong. But even though Trump wants peace, he's also willing to go in and blow stuff up, but just feels that we want to end things quickly. We don't want to be in forever wars. We want swift victories. Like Bill Maher said, he wanted to end wars by giving up, and I assume is talking about Ukraine. I have complicated feelings about Ukraine, but it seemed to me, it seemed like, and I've told you guys this, they acted like it was the most important thing, but never really demonstrated that they were willing to do whatever it took to win. And I don't think that's how you go into battle. I think that's how you go into war. And I think it's good that Ukraine fought for its land and its people. That it was good on them. But if we really wanted them to win, there were more things that we should have done to help them win. But just writing checks forever isn't going to get them to where they need to be. Which, by the way, there was a clip that someone had found. I think maybe it was Maze on X, but Zelensky said that he wouldn't need our money and stuff at some point. It's like within it was like more than a year ago. He said he wouldn't need the U.S. to keep doing this after a amount of time. So that isn't true, obviously. So my issue is I don't see a path of victory for them, and I don't want a forever war that really looks like it's not going to have a good outcome for us. So I think if you want to do war, you do war to win. That's what I think. War is not a game. People die. When Israel started their war with Hamas, which they did re-engage with them after the ceasefire, they just started re-engaging. I'm like, they have all this knowledge, they have this technology, they're all very super spy. Hamas did all this crazy stuff. They got to be serious about protecting their people, about fighting for their future. They got to go in there. They got to kill these people. And they got to, we ought to see assassinations and all kinds of different stuff. And then they did do a bunch of assassinations and, took out Hezbollah and all these other kind of folks. I'm like, this is what I want to see if you're serious about winning. This is what ought to be happening. When you have an existential crisis, and your enemies want to wipe you from the face of the planet. They're ideologically driven to do so. And they brainwash everyone from yay high to think that way, that their aspirations are to murder you. Like you have to win that. You have to win that. So you're gonna do war, you can't be playing games. You can't be playing games. My sister said dad would say that they talked about Reagan like they talked about Bush. I think it's worse now because if you have an American flag, people think you're an extremist. You know what? Well, it always does get worse, but yeah, the dislike of the country. I was at an event. It was the Democrat picnic for Oakland County, and they said things like patriotism or whatever. Like the Republicans have taken those words and they weaponized them, and we need to get it back. And I'm just like, you freaks, you weirdos. Do you know what I noticed when I went there? There wasn't like American flags like everywhere. You go to a Republican event, you see the red color. We're red, red team red or whatever. And you see American flags everywhere. And people do the pledge. Sometimes they do the pledge twice. Someone comes and sings a song. It might not be, the anthem. It might be God Bless America or something. But there wasn't anything like that. It was very kind of low tone on the patriotic vibes. It wasn't. And then they admitted that we kind of confiscated it from. I don't feel like we confiscated it. You can be patriotic and love your country just because you hate Donald Trump. You can still love the country and be proud to fly your flag. But it shouldn't be that you see an American flag and you kind of guess like, I bet they're a Republican. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. But I guess it is. And they kind of admitted that it was. They kind of admitted that it was. So yeah, it is and everything gets so partisan. Hyper partisan. Like Donald Trump saying like the kneeling for the national anthem, there was like early polling and most people thought it was not great what they were doing. Then Trump said something about it and then it became like a 50-50 issue. No, it was still dumb. Like you're just letting your dislike of him alter your brain chemistry and warp reality around you. And that's not good. That's not healthy. As a matter of fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in an interview, she said that she thought the kneeling was stupid. And they didn't want to air that and put that out there because they thought it would damage her. This is their beloved left-wing, go woman, I am woman, hear me roar, justice. People wear pearls and have t-shirts with her on. There was one story went to in some leftist part of the state, and they had just Ginsburg stuff everywhere in the store, and they were afraid to put it out there that she thought kneeling for the national anthem was stupid. It was. It was. And the joker who led that is still a joker. Colin Kaepernick, still a joker, still a clown, talking all that junk, comparing the NFL to slave masters and the slave auction, and still wanted to be part of the slave auction being sold. Sheesh. I think that there's I think the sentiment of Trump and how he does foreign policy is going to be something that stays with the party for a minute. I think as far as some of the economic policies, one of these days someone is going to have to be fiscally conservative, and someone's going to have to make hard decisions or pitch hard decisions. Like Trump, everybody knows like Social Security and some of our we're spending too much money. We just did the CR. But we need to claw back how much money we're spending. We don't need post-COVID spending. We need to we were spending too much money prior to that. Trump spent a lot of money even before COVID started. And then we just spent more and more and more and more. We need to claw that back. I never expected Trump to be like the fiscal conservative. But he doesn't want to touch any kind of benefits or anything like that because that's a political killer. I get that. But there does need to be conversations about restructuring different things like Social Security and whatnot. I guess Americans don't want to hear it right now, and maybe that's on us. Maybe that's on us. If we were more mature to hear the truth, maybe our politicians would tell it to us. Maybe, or we're just going to be in a really bad spot. We're going to be in a really bad spot. But we need to generate a lot of revenue. We need to continue to bring taxes down. Like she says, she's a leftist. Trump wants to bring down the tax rate for companies. So she could call herself a MAGA leftist, but there's some big differences in the agendas of a leftist versus what, Trump is going to do and what he says and whatever, and what he can actually get done. So we need to generate a lot of revenue, but we do need to make cuts somewhere. And I know they're like looking through stuff with Doge, and those things are important for what they're going to cut. But they have to make smaller budgets. they have to do something about spending. They just have to. Eventually, one of these days. So maybe we won't have the party go in that direction. Maybe there's never going to be another revitalization of the Tea Party and people actually following through on those promises. Maybe that won't happen. That's going to be unfortunate for the country. If that's the case. As far as social conservatism, I hope that we will sort of have a revival of conservative sort of views rather than Trump playing to what's popular. Or maybe they're just his convictions. When they asked Eric Trump, he's like, oh no, this kind of, these things are kind of how we always thought, and just never made me feel too much better on the campaign trail when they said things like that. We should do what's right because it is the right thing. And I think if people wanted to explain it in competent ways and how they understand the issue, can convey it properly to Americans, I think we'd be in a good spot, actually. When in 2016, when Donald Trump was on the debate stage versus Hillary Clinton, and he was talking about how Hillary Clinton supported late-term abortion, and the subject of partial birth abortion came up, and she justified it. She there's all kinds of crazy sound bites in her 2016. Like, she was asked on The View, like, you don't believe that a child hours before its due date has any rights? And she's like, yeah, that's how our laws work. Yeah, they don't have any rights. And hours before the due date. Okay. And so she's on this debate stage with Donald Trump, and he's, picking apart partial birth abortion. And so she's like, people who need that are in dire circumstances. And she tries to go this emotional route. And then he says, you're talking about ripping apart the baby, and he doesn't like even explain it as well as you can, because he's just not a very eloquent speaker, but it's graphic and visual enough. And I know people who just were like, I don't see any sort of goodness in this man. And that was a moment to them. And it's like, oh, he does care. Like, there's a glimmer of something in him that I can get behind and support. So he was on the national debate stage. It was their final debate. It wasn't the you'd be in jail one. It was the final one that was on Fox. And I think that was the first question that was really asked about abortion. And he explained it, and he came out on top on that issue. He came out on top on that. And I think people should continue to do things like that. Like, you could say, well, Americans, at the end of the day, it's in the hands of the states right now. But I want to explain to you what this abortion pill does. And explain what it does. Or explain, what a 12-week abortion does. Or 15-week. Because a lot of people don't know. And a lot of people don't care to know. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't tell them. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't tell them. So I think there's a lot of missed opportunities that we have, because the Democrats will just say it's a woman's right, it's a woman's choice, but people don't know. People don't know, or they don't care to know. They don't want to hear. And there's a lot of people who are ambivalent, and they definitely don't know the details. They definitely don't know the details. You see some of these debates with Charlie Kirk, or you go on TikTok, folks don't know anything, but they'll have an opinion regardless. So just go out there and talk about it. Now, I don't know how much I don't know if he's ever seen one. I don't know if he's watched like one of those live action videos about what the pill does. And I don't know if our health secretary has. I don't know who is very pro-choice, by the way. I don't know if he's seen a 12-week or whatever. He's seen probably images of the partial birth. I've been aware of that. So I think you go out there and just explain the issue to the American people. You can begin to change hearts and minds. And you can say, well, no, that the politician has to represent the people, and they have to win, and they can't do anything if they don't win, and it's the activists who have to change hearts and minds. We got to do it together. We got to do it together. We have to do it together, especially because we're at odds. Because folks will say to me, and folks like me, well, it's election time. You got to be quiet. You got to wait till after the election. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about it now. And they're like, well, the midterms are coming up. Like, okay, well, we just had an election. The midterms are coming up. But after the midterms, there'll be a general election. Like, yeah. Okay, well, we got to talk about it sometime. We got to talk about it sometime. We have to change our hearts and minds sometime, which means we have to talk about it sometime. So maybe it's always going to be inconvenient to you for me to bring up that children are dying, but I have to talk about it. We have to talk about it sometime. So no time like the present. No time like the present. I know you're not going to change hearts and minds by being silent. That's what I know. So I hope there's a shift on that. As far as there's a cultural war that we're fighting. We're winning with the trans stuff. Trump was not good on it at first, though. he had to be kind of moved on that. Because in 2016 he said something about Kris Jenner could use not Kris Jenner. Kris is the mom, right? Bruce, sorry, Bruce Jenner, who now goes by Caitlyn, could use the bathroom or whatever. So people had an issue with that, and he like kind of shifted, but still would let him use the bathroom or whatever in Trump Tower in the women's room. And he even said things that were kind of not strong enough in the primary regarding some of the trans stuff. But he embraced that 80-20 issue. He did. And he went out the gate on it with his executive orders and stuff and trying to protect women's sports. So he could be, he listens, and he sees the tide turning. He wants to ride the wave. He's not an ideologue. He wants to ride the wave. I would like if there's an ideologue who can like push America in the right direction, and he can do that too, because there's people following him to some of the positions that he's taking. But he in 2016 or 2015 he was saying that women who have abortions, we should arrest them, because that's what he thought the pro-life movement wanted. And by the way, I thought that was the correct position at the time. I had to be kind of unconvinced of that, and then I unconvinced myself of that position. But that's what he thought people wanted. I guess someone talked to him, and he kind of got rid of that position. But at first, it was like abolition. he was riding that wave. So he'll have a hard line in the sand for what he wants to do, what he wants to stand for. But otherwise, he's riding the wave, and we can't survive as a party like that. We can't survive And Trump isn't going to have the same kind of coalition. He's not going to, whoever his successor is going to be, they're not going to have a lot of the same things in his toolbox, like his popularity. They're not going to have his charisma. Gosh, they're definitely not going to have his charisma. There's just so many unique things about Trump. Whoever comes next is just, you can't, it's not going to be the same makeup, because you're going to have a different person. So you might have to not necessarily rebuild the coalition, but we have to know what we stand for, because a lot of the party is, like, I think, centered around the character rather than digging down deep with a lot of different values. So anyway, let's move on. I wanted to show an example of how Trump's critics have changed and shifted in order to attack him. It's just this really quick clip of Bill Kristol that I want to show. If I saved it. Maybe I didn't. Bill Kristol was saying something about the gangs. Oh, here we go. So he said Venezuelan deportations are evil, dystopian, and extremely un-American. We are talking about these gangs that murder and rape folks, and they're taking over those complexes and doing all kinds of shady things. They shouldn't be here, but they're doing extra terrible things while here in the United States of America. And Bill Kristol is saying that it's evil to deport these people. Okay. Bill Kristol, I'm a conservative, and he's been never Trumping and just went crazy. But Mays here. Mays has a good account. If you don't follow this person on X, you should. But he said before Trump, Kristol was arguing for deportating unaccompanied children. Now he's arguing against deporting gang members. So let's look at this clip, Blast to the Past.
There you see President Obama in Denver this week. White House even has outings. They call it the bear is loose. With the president taking some heat for shooting pool, but not going to the border to see that crisis firsthand.
We send children back to Mexico. We send children back all over the world.
But they're not in those situations.
Well, they are in those situations, and things in Central America have been tough for a long time. But the idea that you're going to let unaccompanied minors just come into the U.S. because of a loophole in the 2008 law that allows you to send the Mexican kid back and the Honduran kid gets to stay. And that's not sensible. And so that the Republicans are going to propose this week on the Hill amending the 2008 law to have even treatment for everyone. And the president does have to send a message, you can't come here. And why is this happening? David talks about this has been a problem for decades. Why are these kids suddenly flooding this place? Because the president amnestied all the kids who were already here in 2012, and people in Central America decided. So the Republicans. Can I just say one thing? He just finished. He amnestied all the kids who were here, and every sensible person in Central America thought, hey, great, if I can get my kid into the U.S., there'll be an amnesty.
And I think that's part of the problem for the president. If you go down to the border, part of his message has to be, you guys have got to go back home.
There is no such pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for these kids. So it is important for the president to clarify that the misrepresentation that's going on purpose by criminal forces in Central America is not so. That's why it would have been important for him to go to the border.
So, Kristol there was willing to send back children across the border, but now it's a problem to do with the gangs. Now it's an issue and a problem when we do it with the gangs. How did Trump break these people? How did Trump break these people? I understand that you were upset that he came on the scene and he didn't really represent Republican values the way that you wanted them represented, and certainly didn't represent conservatism the way that you wanted it represented, as far as fiscally or, culturally or whatever, socially. I get that. I understand. We just had a conversation. But why are you now changing all your positions? Why do these people change their positions and who they are just so they can attack Trump? Now, I would assume it's not just an evolution of like, oh, I was wrong about all these things in the past, and now I'm on the opposite side, and I'm of Trump, and now I'm aligned with all these leftists and stuff. They were the people who were on the right and attacking him, and the people on the left could point and say, see, Bill McChrystal thinks Trump's a bad guy. Even these people on the right think that he's a bad guy. And so he had all these things to complain about Trump, and people on the right are like, bro, that's our guy. He's our nominee. Like, why? He's going to be our nominee. He is our nominee. He's our president. Like, we're not aligned. You're attacking our guy. You're making our guy look bad. We're not going to give you our money, our subscriptions, our but the people on the left are like, yeah, go ahead, attack him. We'll support you. Absolutely. So I think they have to play up to this leftist audience. I think they're stuck in a rut in that kind of way. I don't think, because Bill Kristol saying this stuff, he's already old, and he's only older. Do you know how hard it is to get older people to change their opinion on stuff? Do you know how hard that is? Like, if you're a middle-aged person, or you're like a kid in your 20s going your 30s, and you start having kids, you're like, oh, my life isn't how I thought it would be. But if you're an older person, do you know how hard it is for an older person to change their worldviews, their foundational views? Not just like, maybe the tax code should be like, I don't know, 18 instead of 17 or something. Like, not things like that. Matters of transgenderism and whether you're going to deport gangs. You don't just, I don't know, change those things. I don't think. But maybe you would be willing to say anything for $1. And I don't love charging people and I guess alleging insincerity, because a lot of folks will try to throw that my way or whatever. Someone said today, like, get your reparations, sis, any way possible. I'm like, I don't believe in reparations, but whatever. Because I don't think I can be sincere with my positions, but I'm definitely sincere with my positions, and I have changed over with minor things over the years, but Bill Kristol, it's just too much. It's just too much. So the left is still going on and on, mad that they are deporting these people. And so Trump and them, they got to like prove that they're like associated with these gangs. And here's our press secretary.
Follow up on that then. So you're saying definitively the administration can prove everyone that was put on those flights to El Salvador was either a member of Tren de Aragua, MS-13, or some other entity?
We've already provided the breakdown in the effort of transparency about the 261 illegal aliens who were deported. 137 of those were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. 101 of those were Venezuelans removed via Title VIII, which, as you know, are just regular immigration proceedings. And 23 of them were MS-13 Salvadorian gang members. There were also 2 MS-13 ringleaders as part of that group of 23 who President Bukele particularly expressed his gratitude for their return so he can demand justice in his home country.
Just let him go. Just let him go. The White House, I don't have a clip pulled up, but on TikTok, their Team Trump account, wasn't the White House, but it was a Team Trump account. They had an image of these gang members being arrested and put on the plane. And you can see the like border patrol on like some device or whatever. And they had the music closing time. So it was pretty funny. And someone did ask them about it in the White House about that. But I don't have that clip pulled up. I don't have the clip pulled up. But yeah, they're trying to really make a big deal about him deporting all these criminals, these rabid criminals. This is probably the last thing I'll show you guys, but I just want to show you. The other day was St. Patrick's Day, and CBS News compared them deporting these gang members to the Irish coming over here.
On this St. Patrick's Day, as millions of Americans celebrate their Irish heritage, recent events remind us that the Irish were among the first immigrants to be targeted in deportation crackdowns.
In the mid-1800s, New York and Massachusetts enforced policies to have Irish immigrants rounded up and deported.
The American Civil Liberties Union didn't exist then, but if it had, it may have taken the legal position it is taking now, suing the Trump administration to stop what it considers to be the illegal deportation over the weekend of more than 200 migrants to El Salvador.
Oh, and why are they going to El Salvador? CBS is such I didn't notice how trashy CBS was till like I know like there were moments I'm like, oh, that's dumb, that's a dumb segment, but I didn't realize how bad it was until this election. Maybe you guys, the light had already gone off on your head, but this past election, CBS, like, CNN and MSNBC and how bad those folks could be, but CBS, man, is just crazy. So I do like history. I am quite familiar with different things about that era that they mention. Particularly, I mean, I found that era fascinating anyway, 1800s, Civil War, all that stuff. But I wrote a historical fiction fantasy novel, The Color of God's Eyes, that takes place, during the Civil War era. And so there was a lot of, well, they treated the Irish like crap. They were treated very poorly. There were a lot of Irish immigrants. There was a lot of gang violence and other things like that. The movie Gangs of New York focuses on that. The big fight scene like takes place like during the draft riots. I think it's during that time that's when they have their beef, but it does have the draft riots in there. And there's some things in there that are pretty accurate. There are things that aren't, like the Barnum Museum. They mentioned it being burned, but the barn, like P.T. Barnum, he did have a museum and it was burned, but it wasn't during that time. But it's an interesting film. And so I don't know off the top of my head, like all the breakdown of why they were deporting. I don't know if it was just out of people being xenophobic or people actually being associated with gangs, because there was a lot of like gang violence and fighting and things going on during that time. But if they were like innocent Irish folks just being kicked out of the country, which I don't know what period of the 1800s they're referring to, because they were like Irish immigrants. They'd come and they'd be like, here's a gun, go fight for Mr. Lincoln. Good luck. But if they were wrongfully deporting them just out of like, we don't need you here, that's nothing like what's going on right now. That's nothing like what's happening right now. Why? It's St. Patrick's Day. And there's probably a lot of Irish Americans just like, I'm proud of my heritage or whatever. And here's CBS getting on their program, comparing them to rapists and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's insane. Why? Why are they doing this? Who wrote these scripts? Why did they read them? What is their agenda? Do they think people won't look up the information? Do they think people won't read an article, won't see any briefings from the press secretary, or won't read a single tweet from the president? They're just totally oblivious. It's like, oh, they're picking on those poor Venezuelans. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. Donald Trump is blessed. I will continuously say this. This man is blessed with terrible enemies. Terrible enemies. His success, his victories politically have so much to do with having terrible enemies who prioritize the wrong things all the time. All the time. RC said CBS has always been trashy, but their colors came shining through because of the election. Is that just really what it is? Because like there's moments maybe I just didn't pay attention to it that deeply, but like the debate and other CBS just threw me for a loop this past election cycle. And and the work continues. the work continues. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost a stream or on the side, all that good stuff. So you guys can support. I appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch available on the website as well, different t-shirts and mugs. So go ahead and check out that stuff. Also, the book I mentioned, my historical fiction fantasy, The Color of God's Eyes, and the song on the Devil's Lips. I encourage you guys to go check that out. Think the American Civil War meets X-Men. It's a very interesting story. I have other books that you guys can check out as well, like Super Kid, and I got Super Kid 2. So most of my books are fiction, but I do have, of course, God is Blood Against Abortion as well. So anyway, I thank you guys for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed the show and your conversations with each other. God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.